Okay, so in this program we're going to have two different warm-ups because we have two different focuses in the workouts. One of them is strength, the other one is conditioning. Now if you were to do the same warm-up for the conditioning as you would for the strength, nothing bad would happen per se. The idea behind this warm-up is that it's going to better prepare you for the demands of the strength training, and that the conditioning warm-up is going to better prepare you for the demands of the conditioning workout. So again, as long as you're warming up and you're doing something to prepare, you're going to be just fine. The idea here is to squeeze a little bit more out of each workout by making your warm-up focused a little bit more in on the intricacies of the step that you'll be doing. So first and foremost, we're going to start off as usual with deep breathing. Now, you're going to be on your back, like so. Alright? You can have your legs bent or straight, whichever you like. Breathing deep into your stomach. Once you've gotten in a few breaths like this, you're going to lift your head, and you're going to continue to breathe. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that the minute that you raise your head, your core is automatically going to start firing up. The reason this is important is because everything in the strength program is going to require you to keep your abs very, very tight. So while keeping your abs tight, you also have to be able to breathe behind that tension, or as we like to say, to breathe behind the shield. So by lifting your head in this position and breathing, it's automatically going to teach you how to take shorter, more punctuated breaths while also keeping the tension into your stomach. This is working on what we like to call reflexive tension, or tension that happens basically as a result of whatever movement you're doing, as opposed to the feed-forward tension, which is something that you see in the more high-level strength movements that you'll be doing. Feed-forward tension would be something like where you intentionally get as tight as you can in order to be able to better perform whatever exercise it is that you're doing. So this is going to be the start of it, and before we do the feed-forward tension, we want to have the reflexive tension in place so that we can add even more tension on top of it and get more performance out of each rep, each set, and so on. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to start working on recruiting other muscles with the same idea of that reflexive tension. Now, the first thing we'll do for the neck nods, or the second thing, I should say, the first thing being what we did on the ground, is you're going to be in this position, or this one, whichever you find more comfortable, and we're going to start doing some neck nods. So in addition to going up and down, we're also going to go over each shoulder. So you're really going to look to the sides if you're trying to look at the opposite back pocket. One thing you're going to know is that as you do that, your lats are going to start contracting automatically. So in things like your one-arm push-up practice and then your pull-up practice, you're going to need to make sure you keep your lats tight. This is going to help keep your shoulders stable. It's also going to allow you to get a lot more strength out of each of the movements. So doing something like this is going to prepare your lats for the job that they're going to have to do with any sort of upper body movement. Okay? And by the way, same thing would go with your L-sit work, because that also requires that you keep your lats very, very tight. So once again, it's going to look just like this. Breathing nice and deep. Like so. And now, on that same note, you're also going to want to make sure that you get your glutes engaged as well. So this is going to help start getting your glutes and your abs engaged. This is called elevated rolling. You're going to get into a push-up position, like this. You're going to lift your leg, and you're going to try to point it behind you. And as you do that, you're going to notice the leg on the ground starts to roll over onto its side. Eventually, you'll be able to lift up one hand, keep moving your leg, and you'll be able to get all the way up, like so. And you'll reach back, doing the same thing. And you're going to repeat on the other side. Okay, so once again, lift, reach. And as I'm reaching, I'm not reaching like this, okay? I'm completely extending my hip. So it's like I'm trying to reach as far as I can. So while I do that, this glute is staying very tight. Now the other glute is starting to get engaged as well. By the time I get to here, I've got lats engaged, I've got the glutes engaged, I've got everything working, including the core. Okay? If, for some reason, this feels a little too intimidating, what you can do to begin with is another one that's actually going to help possibly get your lats fire up even more, as well as your scaps, which are the shoulder blades and all the muscles that surround them. You do the same thing, but right here. You're going to reach, like so. Shorter overall distance, but you get a very strong contraction all the way in through here. And it's a little bit easier to learn as you don't have to roll over anywhere nearly as much. So from there, what we're going to start doing is we're going to start working on connecting your body's X. So when you start working on one-arm push-ups in particular, the X becomes very, very important. Your X, by the way, is this idea that your body is one large X, as connected by all the fascia in your body and all the other connective tissues. They do it more or less in an X pattern, from the tips of your fingers on one hand to the tips of your toes on the opposite foot. So what we're going to do is we are going to start challenging and building the stability within that X by doing some rocking. So first and foremost, we're going to rock normally, just to get the idea. As we're doing that, we're going to reach forward with one hand, like so, or we can reach backward with one foot, like this. Now once we've got both of those things, we can start doing the same thing on both sides. And once again, this is going to help us to recruit the core, the lats, the shoulder blades and all the muscles surrounding it, the legs, everything. So everything starts getting into play. We're going to make sure you do that on both sides. Okay? So, same thing, just like so. And the last thing we're going to do is once again working on getting all of the muscles of the upper back fired up, in addition to the lats, the core, glutes, everything. So the idea overall with all of this stuff is the reflexive activation of all the muscles that you're going to need for each and every individual strength movement, so that we can connect each of them very, very easily and make you stronger and a more powerful and better connected unit overall. Okay, so the last thing, same basic idea. You're going to be in this position and you're going to crawl nice and slowly, just like this. Okay, so these are all slightly more difficult variations of all of the standard original strength resets, and each and every one of them is going to help you get one step closer, in particular for the strength movement. So these are also, we'll say, slightly more strenuous than the more basic resets, which we're going to be covering next for the conditioning. So stay tuned. Alright, so now we're going to start working on the warm-up for your conditioning training. This one, as I mentioned before, is going to be slightly different, and the rationales are also going to be different due to the demands of the conditioning training. So we're going to start off, as usual, with the deep breathing. This time, we're going to go from being on your back to being flat on your stomach. So what it's going to look like is this. So this is called crocodile breathing. And what I really like about it is that it teaches you how to breathe with your entire midsection. Oftentimes when we're practicing our breathing, if we ever even practice it, we don't really use the sides of our body to get a really truly deep breath. Now, when you are really sucking wind from like round number 10 of a conditioning workout or even deeper within, the thing that you need the most is the ability to take in a lot of oxygen. And the thing that gasses people out the quickest is simply that, is they're not able to get enough gas or oxygen back into their system to keep fueling them. So your breathing is incredibly important, and the ability to breathe deeply, not only into your stomach but also into your sides, is going to help save you, particularly when the going gets very tough. So that's number one. Number two is we're going to start doing something to help open up the upper back a little bit. Since the strength training requires a lot of this hollow position where we're going to end up a bit hunched over, we're going to want to make sure that we do the exact reverse as well. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to get into TV watching position. You can get into whatever position is comfortable for you. Some people find that if they're up this high, it's a little rough in the low back. So I just have them go a little further forward with their hands. In any event, what you're going to do, same thing, up and down, and over each shoulder. You really want to test how strong you are in this extended position. You can also reach one hand out. It's going to really fire up all the muscles in your upper back, around your shoulder blades, and so on and so forth. And from here, of course, you can continue to do your neck nods as you would before. Next thing, we're going to work on the rolling. Now, one thing we haven't included yet in the programming for this is a rotational component. So I want to make sure that we get that done in the rolling right here. So this is considered a regression in the world of original strength, but this is a fantastic way to get a lot of strength around the midsection and once again around the sides as well. This is also going to make your back feel really good, so it's totally worth it. I'll show you from the side first. What you're going to want to do is you're going to have your knees at or above the belt line, and you're simply going to go back and forth. Now you'll notice my knees go all the way to the ground because I have the flexibility for it. If yours do not, there's no shame in going a little shallower. You're still going to feel the effects in all the right places. There's no point in trying to force it. The important thing here is that I'm not coming up with my upper back up the ground. I'm keeping my shoulder blades on the ground and going back and forth like so. You can also extend the top leg or extend both legs if you have the strength and the flexibility to do it. I definitely encourage it. Next thing is going to work on the rocking. For this one, we're going to keep it very simple. We're just going to rock back and forth like so. If you'd like to get a little bit of an extra strength component, you can lift the knees off the ground like so, right? Or you can lift one leg like this. You get a little extra hip mobility in there. Perfectly acceptable. Last thing is that in place of the crawling as we normally would do it, we're going to do some dead bugs or cross crawls instead. There's going to be plenty of crawling in this program, so we don't necessarily need to do that much within the warm-up itself. So for the dead bug, you're going to be on your back like this. You can also have your knees bent if you need. And we're simply going to go down opposite sides, like so, or cross crawl, like this. If you can touch your elbow to your knee, I recommend you do that. If not, hand or forearm is also acceptable. This is really going to get your core fired up so that you can get a lot of the core stability that you're going to need to be able to safely do all the different movements in the conditioning portion of it. And it's also going to help make sure everything feels quite a bit easier as you're doing it. So, give these a shot. Let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy. Alright, now we have moved on to the flexibility portion of the training. This is something that a lot of people like to try to treat as sort of superfluous in their training, but I think that regardless of your age, flexibility work is something that you're always going to want to include, at least on some level. Again, particularly because most of us sit around a lot during the day, and we end up in certain postures that are not really very conducive toward safely building strength upon your strength. And we want to make sure that we undo a lot of that so that you can continue to get stronger more safely. So there are a couple of very basic movements that don't really require too much instruction, even though there's quite a bit of information going into them. If you're feeling better as you do these or after you do these, you'll know you're on the right track. As you get better and better at these, you might want a little more instruction so that you know how to take advantage of all the nuances. So for now, this is going to be sort of a crash course. So this is certainly not the end-all be-all what I'm about to show you. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on loosening up the upper back. In your T-spine mobility or thoracic spine mobility in particular. So the two things we're going to work on is rotation and extension, right? So for the rotational part, we're going to start doing what's called a bretzel, and it's going to look a little something like this. You're going to have your head relaxed on a pillow or some sort of an elevation. You're going to grab one knee, bring it across to the other side. The other side, what you're going to do is you're going to grab onto your shin, or well, not shin, but your instep or top of your foot, like so. And you're going to try to keep your knee not at like 90 degrees, but maybe closer to 100, something like that. Keep it pinned down. And you want to relax into this position while keeping this leg pulled tight. So you don't want this knee up here. You want it pulled back, like so. Okay, you're going to want to make sure you do this on both sides. So the other side, same thing. Bring the knee to the ground at about 100 degrees. Grab onto the top of your foot. You may notice a disparity on the two sides. So one side might have a little better rotation, one side might have a little less. So the side that has better rotation, you don't necessarily have to work on as much. The side that has less rotation, you want to spend a little bit more time on. So now that you've got the rotational component out of the way, next thing is we're going to be working on some extension. Now typically with the extension stuff for the upper back, people like to do this cobra stretch, and that's good, but a lot of times it doesn't quite reach where it should, and also depending on your arm length and your current flexibility, it may not be your best option. Next best thing would be to do something like grab a chair like this, and you're going to get into the same position as you would for your neck nods, right? You're going to grab onto the chair like so, and you're going to push down very, very strongly. Now what this is going to do is it's going to start firing up all these muscles in your upper back, and it's really going to help you to extend quite a bit. This is one of the best moves that I know of for helping to get your thoracic extension back very, very quickly. So I'll demonstrate once more. You're going to get here like this, and you're going to push down very hard. Keep your elbows straight to the best of your ability, and kind of imagine that you're trying to wrap your spine around like a Swiss ball. So you're not just doing it really passively where you're jamming the joints together. You're actively pressing down, and you're also actively pulling yourself up into this position to take as much advantage of that muscular force as you possibly can. And even just doing that, I already feel a lot more opened up, and that was just through 2 rounds of that, just done very short and one right after the other. So this is very, very powerful, even for somebody who's generally pretty good at flexibility like me. It works every time. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do a little bit of work for the shoulders. So I'm going to show you in a couple of angles. I'm going to show you seated, but generally you would do this either standing or lying down, but seated works just fine. This is the overhead stick drill, and what you're going to do is you're going to grab far on the edges of a stick like this. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, this is just a broom handle. You're going to go behind the head, like so. Now I'm doing this pretty easily. Again, I've got a relatively good flexibility and mobility, but what it might look like for you might be a little something more like this, and you're going to get stuck at one place. What I don't want you to do is do this just to get back. The point is not to get the stick all the way behind you. The point is to improve your flexibility and start stretching out your chest, your biceps, and so forth by weighting out the tension a little bit and doing little bouncing movements in and out of the really tough spot, like so. What this is going to do, this is just going to help you gently start working beyond where your body finds the need to give you some resistance, so that eventually you don't have to stop here. Maybe you'll start stopping a little further beyond. Okay, once you get to the point where you can do this nice and easily, you can start going a little narrower. You're not going to get super narrow, so you don't want to try to get anything like this. It's just not going to happen unless you want to damage your shoulders. So what you're going to do, once you can do that, is you're going to go face down on the ground, and you're going to start doing it down here. Really great drill, maybe a little more advanced than what you're ready for at the moment, so stick with the standing drills for the time being, and as time goes on you'll be able to do it on the ground, no problem. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working a little bit on the lower body. One of the things that's very important for lower body flexibility is the hips, and quite often people just ignore them altogether. So what we're going to do is we are going to start opening the hips up a little bit by doing some movements that are going to help open up the areas that tend to be really tougher. So the inner thigh, the outside of the hips, as well as the front of the hips. All right. So for the inner thigh, I highly recommend the frog stretch, like so. Just do these little back and forth rocking movements with your knees spread out far. Now the important part here is that you're not doing this. We'll get almost no hip flexibility work in. You have to keep your back neutral, keep your eyes forward. Okay, you only go back as far as you can while maintaining the spine. So if you start getting here and you do this, it's no good. Okay, back and forth, nice and easy, like this. You're going to notice your knees are probably going to want to start going further outward as you do that. And that's awesome. Okay, you're going to let them do that. Next thing, once you have done that, the next thing to do would be figure 4 stretch. This is one of my favorites. This really works wonders for opening up the outside of the hip right here. And what you're going to do is, you see that I'm kind of in the shape of a 4 right here. I'm going to put one hand inside the 4, okay? One hand outside the 4, the hand that's on the inside, the elbow goes inside where the knee is, right here, and I start pulling toward my chest, like this, okay? This works wonders, like I said, for opening up the side of the hip, and it feels really awesome. Make sure you do it on both sides, just like so. Really press strongly with the elbow right here. Okay? And the last thing that we'll focus on for the hips is going to be the hip flexor stretch. Now the standard hip flexor stretch is good. This one's going to be a little better. What we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of some of the stuff that we learned about the hollow position, and we're going to use that to stretch the hips out even more. So, many people keep in an upright position, like so, to stretch out the hip flexors, like this. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go hollow. Right away from doing that, you're going to feel a strong stretch in here. And all I want you to do is maintain this strong stretch and move a little bit forward from the hip as you do it. Again, not a whole lot. You're going to feel a very, very strong stretch here. You shouldn't feel anything in the back, so this is a common thing that people like to do to make it seem like they've got really great hip flexor flexibility, but in reality it's all coming from the back. Okay, so from here, once again, stay tight here, tuck your tail under, automatically you're going to start stretching out the hip flexor. So, one more thing that we will cover that is typically something that stops a lot of people short in all sorts of flexibility and even strength efforts is tight hamstrings. If you want to start working toward L-sit pull-ups, L-sit, even just with your hands down to the side, it's very important to have flexible hamstrings as well. So in order to do this, one of the great ways that I've found that helps, in addition to all the other stuff that we've done, both with the original strength resets and the stuff we've done here, is the single-leg good morning. So what you're going to do, you'll get into a position like this. You're going to push your hip back very far, like so. You've got most of the weight on this hip, this leg I should say, and the other leg is just keeping you from falling over. This is a very, very strong stretch in the hamstring, okay? We'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll lean back very slightly, like this. Notice that this is a really big movement in the hip, not so much in the knee. So it's not quite like a kettlebell swing with a little bit more knee movement as well. We're talking about very, very little knee movement, very, very strong stretch in the hips. Main thing to do here is simply get into position, and you can either do these little pumping movements, like so, stretch it out, or just wait out the tension. There's a lot more you could do with the position, but if you're just starting out, doing anything that works is going to be the thing that's going to help you out the most. So give these a shot. If you have any questions, drop me an email. I'd be very happy to help you out.